Prince William wraps up his trip to New York City as King Charles and Camilla make a splash in France. Plus, Prince Harry denied a visit to Windsor as Kate and William are more in sync than ever. Plus, author Ed Owens tells us if he thinks a reconcile between Harry and his family is likely.
I think a reconciliation with Charles and Harry is much more likely than at this stage it is with Harry and William.
We've got that plus so much more in today's Royally Us. Everyone, and welcome to Royally Us. I'm Christina, that's Christine, and another big week of royal news and some fashionable royal news. We got a tiara moment, which we love.
There's a lot to get into. I say that every week. There's a lot to get into. Lots of fun stories this week.
Lots of fun stories, so let's get right into it. And like we said, Queen Camilla made a splash in France, and she opted for a French minimalist chic and her late mother-in-law's Queen Elizabeth's jewelry for a glamorous night at Versailles. So at the decadent state dinner at the historic 17th century palace just outside of Paris on last Wednesday, Camilla walked the red carpet in a bespoke navy dress by Dior with a matching full-length cape. She completed the look with a necklace and bracelet from King George's sapphire suite and a personal favorite of Queen Elizabeth. So there was around 150 guests, including prominent figures from both Britain and France. And it was definitely a moment to be talked about. And King Charles actually recalled past visits to France made by his mother, Queen Elizabeth, and father, Prince Philip, saying that they always loved stepping out there. It was one of their first state visits together. And he recalled it fondly.
This whole visit to France was really, hugely successful, but it was lots of fun to see them, especially sort of this very glamorous state dinner at the Palace of Versailles, but also, Queen Camilla visited the National Library of France and launched this literary prize, but also they visited a sustainable, eco-friendly winery, which I feel like maybe Queen Camilla put forward. I get that vibe off of her. And they visited sort of learning more about French wine culture, but also how they're changing to more sustainul and eco-friendly methods.
Definitely. How can you go to France and not visit wine country, even if you're the king and queen? You have to. Well, we have to talk about, I know we talked a little bit last week about Prince William's trip to New York City, but we were in the midst of it when we filmed, so now we got to kind of wrap it all up. And while most of his overseas tour surrounded his Earthshot Prize and other environmental issues as well, he did, when he was meeting at the United Nations, he did visit a firehouse which surrounded a cause close to his heart, and that was the mental well-being of first responders. He was actually right down the road from us, and he met with recruits and long-serving firefighters to hear about their experiences working in the city and discussing the importance of prioritizing their mental health. So important. We know that mental health is obviously a big initiative for Prince William, and it was nice that he took the time to speak to some first responders as well.
Yeah, it was really great to see him. They do such a good job of sort of tying all of his, those important causes together, from Earthshot to mental health to supporting first responders. His work as an air ambulance pilot really must help him relate to these people. And it's just so nice to see it all come together cohesively.
Definitely. And when he was speaking at the Earthshot Summit, he did tell everybody that he actually went for a jog in Central Park and was not discovered by anybody. So imagine that, just running through a park being like, he looks very familiar.
To be fair, a lot of New Yorkers just sort of look at the ground or at their phone. I mean, I'm not
That is true. That's probably true. Probably nobody noticed him at all.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, the Prince of Wales has sent a poignant message to those dealing with loss and says help can come through sharing the experiences. So William's words come in a foreword to a booklet prepared by London's Air Ambulance charity and features the stories of 12 families who have lost loved ones. He wrote, "No two experiences of bereavement are ever the same. The sudden and often unexpected loss of a loved one can be profoundly difficult to process, even with the passing of time. However, some solace can be found through the sharing of experience. The families who have contributed to this booklet have shared the most precious of moments, thoughts, and feelings, and I would like to thank them for opening up and allowing us into their very personal journey." I'm sure reading this forward from Prince William, may give some of these people a little sense of comfort.
Absolutely. And again, this is him sort of tying several causes together, both his work with the air ambulances, but also, he's patron of the Child Bereavement Organization in the UK, which would certainly support some people who might be going through bereavement with the air ambulance, organization. And so all of these causes really are interconnected.
They really are. All right, moving on over to Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. They made a surprise appearance at a star-studded charity fundraiser to support local California first responders. So the Duke and Duchess of Sussex stepped out at the Fall 1805 Live Festival on September 22nd, which was held at Kevin Costner's beachfront estate. Nice to have nice friends. The annual festival is the flagship event for the 1805 nonprofit, which supports all three primary first responder agencies in Santa Barbara, California. So to help raise funds and celebrate the heroes, an annual music festival is put on at Kevin's home. Must be a big home to have a music festival.
Imagine. I mean, my home certainly could not host a music festival. But it was sort of nice, again, seeing them out and about for a good cause, sort of getting some work done, raising funds for important organizations. It's good for them to, in a sense, for them to sort of be getting into some charitable work.
Definitely, yes. And I think that they presented Kevin with an award and things like that, getting an award at your own home. I love this story. There's so many different layers to this. It's so great. Always known to be a celebrity. All right, let's spill some royalty. And while it's been a year since Queen Elizabeth's passing, the Prince and Princess of Wales have taken on new titles and new responsibilities. So a source tells us William and Kate are more in sync than ever. They cherish what they have with each other. For them, family comes first and always will. And while it has been a tough year, like I said, with the loss of the Queen and the added responsibilities they have, a source does tell Us Weekly that William tells anyone who will listen that he couldn't do it without Kate, and she echoes that right back. Yeah, it does seem like they are very much, what we see in public, it seems like they are very much in sync and, always kind of on the same page. And, they do take their duty and responsibility very seriously.
Yeah, I imagine we've heard time and time again that they rely on each other so much. And we know that family is important to them from how they prioritize things like the school run and being home for school holidays. And you can just tell that, they support each other so much. And really the amount of pressure they must be under constantly, it must be really draining. So to have someone who's sort of in a similar position to rely on, I bet it's invaluable to them.
Oh, I'm sure. And they're the only people that know what they're really going through besides the king and the queen. It's a very small circle of people who you can probably really trust and probably really can relate to. All right, moving over to Meghan. She has withdrawn her trademark application for her defunct podcast Archetypes months after Spotify dropped the show. So she made the request to withdraw to the U.S. Patent and Trademark Offices, according to the office's records. Now, this comes after her multi-million-dollar Spotify deal fell through in June, axing her award-winning podcast from airing a second season. So maybe that means that Archetypes is not going to find a new home, that they're kind of maybe put their podcast careers to the side and focus on some other things. But yeah, it doesn't seem like Archetypes is going to be seeing a future.
Yeah, and there's really, like you said, there's lots of things that this could mean. It could be that in order to go to a different platform, they have to change the name or things like that, or maybe they're done with podcasts and focusing on something else. This definitely does seem to be the end of Archetypes, though.
Yes. Well, only time will tell what happens next. But this was an interesting story. So maybe just stirring up some drama, which, we love to do. So Prince Harry was denied permission to stay at Windsor Castle when he traveled to London for the Well Child Awards earlier this month. So this is according to some news reports. So the Duke asked if he could stay at Windsor Castle. The Telegraph reported that he sought permission to visit his late grandmother's grave at St. George's Chapel in Windsor, which he did on September 8th. However, the palace was reportedly unable to grant Harry's last-minute accommodation request. The palace did respond to his request, though, reportedly explaining that the king would be at Balmoral Castle on those dates, with an offer for Harry to actually join his father at the Scottish estate. He then asked to stay at Windsor, but the palace was unable to grant his request without sufficient notice. Maybe it does seem like there's communication. Maybe they just need more than a couple days notice that he wants to stay at Windsor, but this has probably been on the books for quite some time, so you would imagine he would have made accommodations well in advance.
Yeah, I think this is such a strange story because he obviously knew he was coming. Why didn't he organize a place to stay sooner? And then, maybe this is a security issue. They can't accommodate, last minute requests. And there's some security reason, and for him, they're so passionate about their security. I don't know. There's so many things that could play into this. I have lots of questions, like you said. Why didn't he book someplace sooner?
Yeah, I wonder where he ended up staying. I have no idea. At a friend's couch? We don't know. So we'll never know. All right, well, let's break down the royal rules. And we wanted to revisit more of our conversation with Ed Owens. Last week, he revealed if the palace has regrets about how they handled Meghan and Harry's departure from the royal family. But this week, he answers the question if a reconciliation is in sight. Do you feel like there could be a reconciliation? I'm sure you get this question all the time, and it's impossible to even know. But do you feel like a reconciliation could happen between Harry, his father, and his brother, or do you feel like maybe doors are closed? And can the media help with a reconciliation as well?
I think a reconciliation with Charles and Harry is much more likely than at this stage it is with Harry and William. Not least because the person that came out, I think, most negative really out of the book was probably William rather than the king. Actually, having read Spare, I was often quite touched by the way by the way Harry spoke of Charles, whereas William, I think his public image has changed somewhat as a result of the way he was projected in Spare. Can the media help? That's a whole other question, and right. I think. Looking at the kind of the nature of the British media, whilst on the one hand I think they'd relish this idea of reconciliation, not least because it would give them headlines, it would be selling newspapers, and that is what drives the tabloids more than anything. But I'm sure from the moment that any reconciliation was complete, they'd be looking to pick it apart again and trying to undermine that relationship, because that's what the media's done historically with this royal family. It's a really toxic relationship that the royals find themselves in with the tabloid press. It's developed over more than 60 years. Again, one of my arguments in this book is that the king could go some way to trying to unpick this toxic relationship, trying to, if you like, break this cycle of on the one hand being adulated one day, and then on the other hand being torn down the next. And I think that's the real essence of the relationship, and I think it needs to change.
Yeah, well, you write that maybe Harry and Meghan's departure, showed those cracks in the crown. Do you still think that? And maybe, like you said, he's kind of paving the way for the future children and how maybe things will be a little bit different.
Yeah, I do. And I think for me, Charles has a huge opportunity actually as a king. To do quite a lot of work in terms of preparing the institution for the future in relation to the media. They still promote this idea of that they are, if you like, almost a moral symbol to which the rest of the nation should look, when time and time again, from the abdication crisis onwards, back in 36, and then Princess Margaret, then Princess Diana, and then more recently with the Sussexes, they've been revealed to be a very dysfunctional family. And just admitting that and saying, we're going to move on. We're not going to stage the royal weddings in quite so big a way anymore, because we don't want to present ourselves as that. We acknowledge that we're going to make mistakes. And I think that would make it a lot easier, certainly on his grandchildren. It would take a lot of pressure off them. And I think that's the kind of change they've got to be making.
Sure. And finally wrapping it up, I mean, if the royal family does not make some of these changes and implement some of these changes, could there be a day that we don't see Prince William as king, that the royal family is no more?
I think we're likely to see Prince William as king. I mean, that's mainly due to, I think, the current king's mortality. Yeah,
he's kind of echoing what a lot of people say, that probably a reconciliation between Charles and Harry would happen before William. And based on, them having open communication about them maybe traveling to and staying at Windsor, maybe that'll happen in the future. But like we said, we don't know what goes on behind closed doors. So only time will tell for this one as well.
Yep. Only time will tell.
All right, well, let's wrap it up with our pint-sized palace. And in the new issue of Us Weekly, a source tells us that Kate and William love spending quality time with their 3 children in Windsor. So a source tells us they'll have family nights where everyone takes turn to pick a movie. They are very hands-on parents, but not overbearing. A source adds that William and Kate are determined to raise the kids in as normal an environment as possible. We've heard this time and time again, that this is something that's very important to them, to make a very very abnormal life very normal. And it seems like they do, everyday things. They're just like us.
I know. It's so good to see them. They were spotted earlier this week at a football game for Prince George, which is, of course, soccer in the U.S., in blue jeans and sneakers, regular parents just there to support their kids. So I do think that they really try to balance that sense of normality in a very abnormal life. And I think that's ultimately what helps them be so successful on the world stage.
Right. I couldn't agree with you more. All right. Well, that's it for this week's episode of Royally Us. Let us know what you think in the comments. Keep subscribing, and we will see you guys next week. For more news content and exclusive interviews, make sure to hit the sub, like, and bell button down below and visit usmagazine.com.